All right, for those of you who were in the last session with me, welcome back. For those of you who are new, welcome. I will tell you what I told the group at the beginning of the last session, which is I think I know how it feels now to play for the Cleveland Indians, to have a full baseball stadium with very few people in it. I think that it's great that they gave us this huge space so that each of you could, lounge and enjoy the presentation in a reclined position like a Roman. So if you want to do that, feel free. I will not have any problem with that at all. Actually, one of the things that I will say before we get started is, and I didn't mention this in the last session, I always set up a Today's Meet, a back channel chat for every session that I run. There is the address, todaysmeet.com/CETP. Oh, that should be TPA. I don't know why that mixed that up. My dyslexia is kicking in again. But I know that on today's meet, it's CETPA. So if you go there and you want to take part in the chat, I think that you'll probably get a lot of really good information from your colleagues that are in the room. Part of what I do is I talk about 21st century learning, and I talk about our ability to learn from anyone, anytime, anywhere. It could very well be that the best lesson you learn in this session may come from the person sitting 5 feet to your right and not from me, and that's okay. I think that these kinds of learning environments can be turned into a discussion, and I am comfortable with you having your head down and your iPad or in your laptop while I'm talking. I'll just assume that you're having a conversation with someone else in the room. So todaysmeet.com, CETPA, and just go ahead and enter your name and you can jump in there. In the last session, I talked a little bit about 21st century learning. That was really the focus. And what I was trying to do is get across to people that in 2012, we live in a world where learning has shifted in a way that it hasn't really shifted in almost 500 years. That the ability of anyone at any time to reach out and access the sum of all human knowledge via the internet, along with 2 billion people who can teach you what that knowledge is, how it works, and lead you through your own personal journey of learning, is transformative. It's the biggest change in learning that's taken place since the printing press. And it's causing a huge transformation in our schools. And what I hear time and time again when I speak at big conferences, and by the way, this isn't just in the US, I heard this in Madrid, I heard this in Mexico City, I've heard this in Canada. I hear time and time again, Rob, we're buying this stuff, but people aren't using it. Or if they are using it, they're tending to just do the same things that they did in the 20th century, but they've just updated and digitized it. They're having their kids do their worksheets online instead of doing them on paper, or they're using a PowerPoint instead of using an overhead projector. But I'm having trouble, Rob, moving the needle on learning, on getting kids to collaborate online, to participate in creative activities, to communicate with other students and other experts from around the world. I'm having trouble with that change. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about change in schools, change in organizations, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to make a change happen in your school. Now, it could be the change that I just talked about, or it could be a change that you have in your own vision that you want to achieve within your organization. A lot of the methods that we're going to talk about are going to apply to any organization, not only any organization, but to any idea. So let's go ahead and dive in. I told the people in the last session a little bit about myself. I mentioned that I'm the son of a couple of people in Pennsylvania whose parents were Pennsylvania coal miners who dropped out of school in the 4th and 5th grade, respectively. That caused them to want their kids to get education, and my parents kind of passed that same thing along to me. So I ended up loving education partially because it was something that was told to me that was very important to have, and I kind of wanted to give that to other people. So I became a teacher, and then I became a school CIO. I did that job for about 10 to 15 years before breaking out on my own and writing a book and becoming a speaker and consulting with schools really all over the world. It's been a fabulous journey. I've been so lucky to meet the most amazing educators, really inspiring leaders, and lots of people who are trying to change things through the use of technology in ways that have left me breathless, to be quite frank. And recently, I've tried to help in that work by creating a company called Bright Bites. It's a company that actually tries to measure the impact of technology on learning in a quick and efficient way. If you want, you can check us out in the vendor room and things like that. So let's talk about change. So I want to tell you 5 stories today. They are 5 stories that I am hoping will stick in your head. They're the 5 stories that I'm hoping when you go home and you're talking to your wife or to your husband and they say, did anything else happen at the conference that was interesting? You're going to say, yeah, you know, this guy told this story. I don't remember his last name. It was Mancabelli, something like that. But it was a pretty good story, let me tell you it. And what I want that story to do is to stick in your head for a reason, because each of these 5 stories is a story that if you really think about it and you really embrace the message behind it, you're going to learn something very powerful that will help you change your organization. Not important that you get all 5. A couple of them may apply to you more than others, but all 5 of them could really be used within any organization. The biggest takeaway that I want you to really walk away from in this session is that the change process is not one that is always rational, and it's not always one that's based on motivation. This is something that's kind of hard-coded within us as human beings. We really believe that change takes place because people are motivated to change, and because they're going to think about a problem or a reason. I'm going to give them some reasons why they should change, and then they're going to change. This is sort of the think, act, change, paradigm. And John Kotter and a lot of other people who study organizational behavior kind of study this. And the fact is that while rational thought and motivation is part of what's going on, it actually sometimes can be a very small part of the change process, and sometimes not even the most important part. So one of the things I want to get through in my talk today is that the best approach to change is not always a straight line. I don't know about you. I'm in technology. Quickest way to get from point A to point B is to draw a straight line. I'm a very logical, kind of rational thinker that way. Those straight lines often cause change projects to fail. And in fact, if you study John Kotter is someone who's done a lot of work on change. He has studied change projects in not only the United States, but all over the world. He finds that about 80 to 85% of all projects that try to initiate some large-scale change in an organization fail. So this is a problem worth attacking because a lot of people have it and it's pretty prevalent. So here's story number 1. Change or die. So I want to tell you a story about heart patients. And the story I want to tell you about these patients is this. These are patients that were in a study at Johns Hopkins Medical School. And they actually received news from their doctor that was very dire. And the news that they received from their doctor was, if you don't change the way that you're living right now, you will die. This is not hyperbole. The doctors were not just saying, this to scare them. This was based upon the condition of their heart and their lifestyle. They were often smokers or, non-exercisers, or they didn't eat right, and, add it all up. And the statistics showed that for people who had their heart and those habits, 99.99999% of those people would die within 5 years. So this is a moment where the motivation to change could not be any higher. And my question is, what percent changed? How many people in the room, by raise of hand, think that 90% of the people in this study changed? No one's going to say 90% because that's the sucker answer, right? There's one person who said 90%. Okay, what about 75%? About 6 people? 50%? About a third to a half? 25%. All right, now we'll dig out our real cynics. How many people think 15%? Wow. You guys, wow. How many people think less? 10%. 2 years later, 10% had significantly changed their lifestyle. I hate to reward the cynics, but sometimes you have to. Now, I don't know about you, but this is one of the most depressing figures I've ever run across in educational technology work. Because all I'm trying to do is get people to use Twitter. I mean, my God. 10%? Faced with their life on the line? Only 10% change? What chance do I have here? All right, so why did only 10% change? The reason that only 10% change is the approach that most doctors take to change. And the approach that most doctors take is something that Alan Deutschman, in his book Change or Die, calls facts, fear, or force. If you want to read a great book, Change or Die is the name of the book, Alan Deutschman, quick read. And what he says is that this is how it goes in those conversations with the patient. They say, first of all, let me tell you about the condition of your heart. It's got this much, blockage in the carotid artery. It's got the following characteristics, blah, 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 blah. And 99.9% of all the people who are in your condition, if they don't change their lifestyle, die. Those are the facts. Second thing is fear. Okay? I'm not talking about long time from now. I'm talking about tomorrow. You need to change tomorrow. If you don't change tomorrow, there are dire consequences that are around the bend. And the force comes in when they start pulling the family members in and saying, I don't think he really gets it. You're going to have to change his diet for him. You're going to have to start cooking special meals, make sure he goes to the gym, blah, 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 blah. And that approach of fear, facts, and force, which is taken, they quote it in the study, it's like 90-some% of all doctors, that's how they sort of approach the telling of information like this. That actually reinforces a very common misconception about change, and that's that change is rational. That people who are told they have a problem, if you just explain it to them and make it seem like it's really important, that people will change. If this were the case, there would not be a weight loss industry in the country today, right? If we could all walk by Starbucks and go, no, that scone is 750 calories. Why would I eat that? I don't want to do that. That wouldn't be rational. I don't know about you, but I'm first in line. There was a second study, though, of heart patients. And this one was actually done by Dr. Dean Ornish. Dr. Dean Ornish from your home state of California, I might add. And Dr. Ornish had a belief that this was not just rational, but emotional. That what was sticking people around the change process was an inability to emotionally cope with their situation. So where Dr. Dean Ornish started was he asked people, do you think you can change? Well, after seeing the results of the first study, you're probably not surprised that the overwhelming majority of heart patients said no. Dr. Ornish said, do you think you can change your lifestyle? No, I've been eating this way my whole life. You think you can exercise? No, I don't want to exercise. I don't like to exercise. I've never exercised. I get hurt when I exercise. Do you think you could have less stress in your life? No, I don't think I can. That happened time and time again. Basically, what he found was that his heart patients didn't believe that they could be healthy people. So what Dr. Ornish actually did was he took the approach of actually engaging with that question. Why don't you believe you're a healthy person? He engaged with them at an emotional level. And when he did, the results were actually remarkable. In his 3-year study, 77% of the patients changed their behavior in 3 years. A 67% increase over the other method. So when I think about a 21st century teacher and what I want a 21st century teacher to be, the National Council of Teachers of English defines literacy in the 21st century as these things. I went over this with the last group, so they're getting a review. There'll be a test afterwards. These are the things that a 21st century learner, someone who's literate in the 21st century, should be able to do. Design and share information for global communities, manage, analyze, and synthesize multiple streams of simultaneous information, create, critique, and evaluate multimedia text. So when your teachers go into a professional development session around being a 21st century teacher, and you start throwing at them tools to do this stuff, you're really asking them, do you think you could be a 21st century teacher? And the answer they would probably give you is no. No, I don't think I can do any of this. I don't want to do any of this. I'm not sure I'm all in on this. So my first suggestion coming from the Change or Die story is when you think about your technology PD days, recognize that people are walking into your technology professional development days who probably fearful and angry. The same way a heart patient is fearful and angry about what's going to happen to them next, people are fearful and angry about the rate at which technology is changing in this world. In fact, it feels like a 300-pound elephant kind of sitting on their chest. Every day I get up, there's another story in the paper. Every time I log into the computer, there's another software program that somebody wants me to learn. Every time I think I've learned something, somebody comes out with something new. Okay? And for the most part, we don't engage with that in our organizations. We don't recognize that that exists. We don't talk to people about that. And until we do, it's hard to unstick someone from where they are. Story number 2. Hope Lab. So Hope Lab is a group that was trying to solve a problem. And the problem was kids not taking their cancer medication. I know at this moment you're thinking, boy, what an uplifting session. Heart patients, cancer. I promise you the stories will get more interesting. Less serious. But this is a really good story. This is a really good story. And it's good not only because of what they did, but it's good because of how they did it. So Hope Lab recognized that kids who didn't take, I'm talking about little kids 7, 8, 9, 15, you know, kids who didn't take their cancer medication had a much lower chance of survival. In fact, the first 90 days after being diagnosed and having radiation were really critical. And missing as few as 20% of the doses of medication could have an impact of nearly half the survival rate that the other kids would have. So they decided to take a very unique approach. They developed a game called Remission, or Remission. And the idea was that the game was a superhero game in which the kids were fighting cancer in the game. And the game would actually teach them how to take their medication. And so if you played the game and you went up the levels and you did really well, along the way you'd be learning all of the things you had to learn in order to take your medication all the time on time. And you know, you'd be in really good shape when it came to your recovery. So they would have the kids play the game before they went into radiation or anything like that. The program was a huge success. The kids who played the game a lot, kids who like made it to the top levels of the game, doubled their chance of survival. The interesting thing though was, kids who only played the game a little, like 1 or 2 levels, also doubled their chances of survival. And they had never gotten to the levels where they taught the kids how to correctly take all of the medication. At MIT, they would go, huh? The data does not compute. Anyone have a hunch at what happened? Just curious, actually. Anyone who hasn't heard the story before? Yeah, go ahead with that. Yeah, he said they felt more empowered about how they felt about their treatment and their health. Yeah, what they found with these kids was kids who weren't taking the medication weren't taking the medication because they didn't know how to take medication. They knew how to take medication. They were angry about being a sick kid with cancer. They didn't want to take their medication. They were trying, and it might not be at a conscious level, some of it was kind of subconscious, they were trying to not be a sick kid. And one of the ways to not be a sick kid is to not take your medication. Well, what remission did was it reframed how they thought about their illness. Instead of being a sick kid, they were a hero fighting cancer. And kid after kid said, I never really thought about it that way. Like, I never thought of myself as a sort of more of a hero fighting, this is something I got to get rid of. I'm in charge here. It's a very powerful finding that came through in that study. So when I think about the self-image of teachers, and I think about in the 20th century, what made a good teacher, and in the 21st century, what also makes a good teacher. And it's not an either or. You notice it's not but, it's and. There's a really big difference here. Like in the 20th century, you wanted to have a quiet classroom, and all the kids are paying attention, and they're kind of walking through their work, and we're scoring well on the tests, and I'm the expert in content, and I'm going to walk you through the material, and you're going to take exams, and you're going to show me that you know it. In a 21st century classroom where I can access 2 billion people online, and I can access the sum of all human knowledge, and I have Khan Academy, and I have the ability, if I want to learn Spanish, to talk to someone in South America on Skype at any time I want. If I have all these things available to me, that classroom looks really different. And the reason that your teachers got into teaching may look more like the first column than it does the second column. They may not want to be that teacher that you're trying to get them to be. So one of the things we have to think about from the Hope Lab story is if we're going to tackle professional development around technology and learning, we need to have conversations about the role of a teacher in the 21st century classroom. Our PD, we talk about essential questions. Is anyone familiar with like Grant Wiggins' Understanding by Design? And they'll talk about like an essential question, the question that would drive all of your work for a full year in your PLCs or in different things like that. A good essential question would be, what is the role of a teacher in the 21st century classroom? And giving people the time and space to talk through what that role is and to connect with people online who have already taken on a really different role in their own classrooms and to talk to them online about how that feels for them. How is it different? What kinds of rewards? A lot of people, when they go through the change process, they only see change as loss. In other words, here's what I'm going to lose. Here's what I will no longer get to do. They don't look at it as rewards. They don't look at it as, oh, if I change, this is what I will get. And oftentimes, if you connect with someone else and they tell you how they've gone through that same change and this is what they've got happy kids, they've got engaged classrooms, they've got more of an ability to be in control of their work because they don't feel like they're the only one responsible for instruction. They feel like they're working with a global team. That's a really different kinds of conversation. It can really shift an entire approach. The next time that teacher goes into a class on Twitter, they're not sitting there thinking, oh my God, here's one more tech tool that I got to learn that I have no idea why it's even important. They're thinking to themselves, oh, like I actually want to be more of a 21st century kind of teacher, and oh, look at this, here's an opportunity to do that. Story number 3, influence. Good book, Cialdini, The Psychology of Persuasion is the name of, it's called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. If anybody here is interested in using human psychology for good or evil, I highly recommend this book. I believe that it should only be used for good, and I recommend that to you, but it can cut both ways. So there's a story I read in this book that stopped me in my tracks. And it's something I'll call the Be a Safe Driver story. So they went to a group of homeowners, and they said to them the following: I'd like to put a sign in your yard that says, be a safe driver. It's 6 foot by 4 foot. We've had a lot of accidents in the area. We have people who are driving too fast. We're going to do this campaign. We're going to go across the entire neighborhood. We're going to ask everybody to put these signs in the yard. And we're hoping that people will slow down and think and be a safe driver. What percentage You get a second chance at the percentage guessing. What percentage of people said yes, put the sign in my yard? Actually, let's ask it this way. How many people in this room would say yes? Be honest. Oh, this is almost perfect, actually. It looks like about 20% of the room would say yes right off the bat, and 17% of the people in the study said yes. You can put a sign on my yard. I was actually surprised. I thought that was high. I mustn't be as kind and nice as the other people in the room. Then they did a second study. In the second study, they actually went to people and said, I want to put a 4-inch by 6-inch sticker or piece of cardboard in your front door, like in the screen door or something like that. It says, be a safe driver. And the reason we're doing that is we'd like to have this campaign and blah, 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 blah. Well, how many people would agree to a 4 by 6-inch card? Okay, more. In this study, it was about 99%. People were like, yeah, sure, go ahead, give me the card. Here's where the psychology comes in. So they went back to those people and said to them, 3 weeks later, would you put a 4 by 6 billboard in your yard that says, be a safe driver? 76% of them said yes. 76% of the people who had taken a little card and put it in their door allowed the 4 by 6 billboard to go into their front yard. So why is that? How could it be that 17% say yes under the one study and 76% say yes under the other study? And the reason is, and there's a whole chapter in Cialdini about this, the reason is consistency. As human beings, we like to think of ourselves as consistent people. We like to think of ourselves as people who stick to something. We believe in something. And if we believe in something, we act upon it in a certain way. What is the worst possible thing you can call a politician? Well, what? Flip-flopper, right? I mean, probably criminal is, worse than flip-flopper. Embezzler, that's probably worse. But flip-flopper's up there, right? You get labeled with the flip-flopper tag, you're not going to make it very long. People hate inconsistency. So the people who had put the 4 by 6 card in their screen door and were asked 3 weeks later to put the sign in the yard, they were thinking to themselves, I'm someone who supported safe driving before. I've kind of made a commitment to this. I should do the sign. This is really important. And the reason that's important is because these kinds of commitments are going to determine your success of technology in your schools. I'm going to give you one more example. You get a bonus story in the story number 3. There was a group in a room like this of students who were asked to do a math problem. And they asked people, they said, this group over here, I want you to do the problem, and I just want you to kind of do it in your head. This group in the middle, I want you to do the problem, and I want you to write down the answer. And this group over here, I want you to not only write down the answer, but I want you to turn to the person next to you, and I want you to tell them what the answer to the math problem is and how you got to it. So they had everyone in the class do the problem. And the study was a trick. There was actually not a way you could really get the right answer to the problem with the information that was given. So then what they do is they revealed to the room, oh, there was some missing information. You probably need this to solve the problem. You can rework your answer if you want to rework your answer. People sitting over here who did the problem in their head are the most likely. The vast majority of them go, oh, yeah, thanks for the more information. They rework the problem. People here in the middle who wrote the answer down, a few of them, yeah, that's good, thanks. Thanks for the information. But others kind of said, well, no, I kind of worked it all out. People over here, people who turned to their friend and said, this is how I got the problem, this is how I figured it out, they tend to say, no, I didn't do anything wrong with this problem. Yeah, that's you guys. So what that story shows you, kind of like the story about the sign in the front yard, is that as human beings, once we start moving in a certain direction, the more that we've committed to that direction, we put the little sign in our front door, we wrote it down, we actually told someone how we derived the answer. The more we're moving in that direction, the more we have a resistance as human beings to back up and go in a different direction. So the way that this plays out in schools is that right now in professional development, we tend to have requirements, but we tend not to have commitments. We usually don't get people moving in the right direction when it comes to technology and learning and education. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll hold a professional development day. We'll have people come to the PD day. They have to sit here, listen to a speaker, maybe try something on the computer. And then what are they required to do after that? Required to do. Usually nothing, right? I mean, it might be different in your school, and if it is, I applaud you. But in most schools, you're not required to do anything else. The requirement is a poor way to actually get someone to change. If on that PD day instead, you were to say to these people who are at your school, I'd like you to work with a friend on that day. I'd like you to do the following types of activities. I'd like you to make a commitment to that person that you will do something for a month from now. And then a month from now, we're all going to meet after school. We're going to meet for 1 hour. We're going to tell each other how we did with that commitment. Would make a huge difference in how that entire day was received by the audience and the action that they would take on it in the future. And the nice thing is that if you were to do that and get things moving in the right direction with your teachers, again, remember, consistency works in your favor. So once someone starts thinking of themselves as a 21st century learner, or once someone starts making small commitments to learning in a different way, or whatever the change is that you're trying to bring about, what it does is it creates a snowball effect. And that snowball effect is actually reinforced by the people who are around them, which is a story I'm going to tell in a second. Concrete commitment exercise that I did once at my district was this. I actually asked people to rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 100 on their ability to participate in online spaces. You know, like, do they have Amazon accounts? Do they have Facebook accounts? Do they comment on blogs? Do they do product reviews? You know, all the way up to people who tweet out that they had a pickle at lunch today. You know, personal transparency, everything's out there. I haven't reached personal transparency yet. I'm probably like right about here. And what I said to them is, what's your privacy number? Why is it there? And where do you want it to be 1 month from now? And it caused the conversation on a number of different levels. First level it caused the conversation at is around self-image. You know, where am I? And why am I there? Like, am I down here? I had people in the room going, yeah, I've got like an Amazon account. That's about it. Like, I wouldn't participate in a back channel. I'm not in any social networks. You know, I don't do product reviews on, like, you know, I surf the web, but, you know, I'm not a technological illiterate. I know what I'm doing, but that's pretty much it. And it caused them to say, like, huh, why am I there? Like, what is that? What's the self-image that keeps me there? The other thing this did was it prompted the question of, what are you going to commit to be? You know, do you want to be a little more transparent? Do you want to be a little more engaged? Do you want to be a little more socially connected? And how would you use that in your classroom? And then the idea of the commitment of 1 month from now was a chance to actually check in with somebody else that they had made a commitment to in order to be able to actually see whether or not they had followed through with that change. And success rate was actually pretty good. I would say about 2/3 of the people who were involved in this particular activity seriously committed to a change and changed. And like I said, that can create a snowball effect for the rest. Story number 4. Saints and jerks. I don't use the term jerk, by the way. This is somebody else's. That's why it's in quotes. Notice that? So that's not me. It's in the book Switch. Anyone ever read Switch by Chip and Dan Heath? Yeah. Great book. Great book. If you ever want to read a good book on change. How to change things when change is hard. So in this book, they tell a story. And the story that they tell is about a group of people on a college campus that they're trying to get to donate to a canned food drive, you know, like the kind they have at Thanksgiving. And the story that they tell is about the first research study in which people were sent a letter. And in the letter it says, would you donate to a canned food drive? Pretty much that's about it. It gives the location in the letter of where you should drop stuff off. And it asks people to drop off whatever they would like. And what they find is that among the saints, the people that you would expect to give a lot to the canned food drive, there was a fair response to it. I think it was like 30% of the people responded, 25%. And among the jerks, the people that you would think would not respond to a request for help, there was a 0% response to the letter. Absolutely no one actually dropped anything off. And they had gotten, by the way, the saint and jerk information. The saint and jerk information came from asking everyone in the dorm to rate everyone else. Like, how likely would this person be to give something? And there were some people that were like, everybody in the dorm said this person will absolutely give something. And there were some people who were like, I don't care if his mother needed it. You know, there'd be no possible way this person would give anything. That's where the saints and jerks came from. So then they redid the study. And when they redid the study, they actually included 3 things in the letter that they didn't include the first time. First thing they included was a map. It actually showed the campus, and it showed a pin where to drop off the food. The second thing that it had in there was it didn't ask for a can of anything you want. It said a can of beans. That was it. Third thing it said was, can you think about a time this week when you would be passing by this part of campus because you have to go to class? If you would think about dropping it off then, that would be great. Among the saints, the number of people who donated to the canned food drive doubled. The more interesting part is among the jerks, the ones who supposedly would never give anything, even if their life depended on it, their giving rate went up to about, I think it was 25 to 30%. So what I thought was great about the saints and jerks story is some people will often say in schools, you know, I've got my early adopters. I've got my top 10%. They're going to try any technology out there. They're going to be on the cutting edge. And I've got maybe another 25 or 30% that are pretty open-minded and, you know, blah, 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 blah. But there's some percentage that I got to tell you, Rob, these people are just never, ever, ever going to move. And I've lived that. I did a tablet PC rollout. So this was, so imagine this, tablets, right? 2003, HP tablets. So we were really out there at the time. We did a tablet PC rollout for teachers, and we made it voluntary. And the first year, 16% of the teachers volunteered to be part of the program. It had a very heavy professional development commitment. You had to do 3 weeks of professional development over the summer. And then continuous meetings throughout the school year. It was once a month for like 2 hours after school. We had those people stand up and actually share, kind of like this letter did. We had them stand up and share exactly what they did, what the student outcomes were, and what they got out of being in the program. And the following year, 76% of the people volunteered for the program. Third year, total participation went to 98%, with only 4 people in a district of 300 and some odd teachers saying basically, I will go to my grave without ever touching one of those tablet PCs. 3 of them retired the next year, and then like the other one gave in, knees buckled. There are rewards that you can give for changing and for professional development that I don't think we're really thinking about right now. Right now, a lot of our time gets measured by seat time and degrees. A lot of rewards in our schools right now follow the pattern of, can you formally show me that you learned something? Can you either sit in a piece of professional development where you get a certificate, or can you actually show me with a degree that you took classes or did something like that? In fact, this goes so far that there's a guy that I know by the name of Bill Ferreter. He's from North Carolina. You may have heard of him. He's a writer and an author, and he's done some talking on the educational technology circuit. He's a huge social networking guy. His knowledge of educational technology is very deep. And when it came time to complete his North Carolina requirements for his certification, they have to do credits in North Carolina to stay up to speed as a teacher. He asked the Department of Education in his state what technology classes he could take, and this was their answer. So if you go to Bill Ferreter's blog, he actually writes out the conversation he had when he called the Department of Education. He called them to say, I'm an author in educational technology. I've been doing this for years. I can't take these classes. Can I do an independent study and do my own project to fulfill my professional degree certifications for the state of North Carolina? And the person on the phone, and he has it on his blog, says, please take the classes we've offered, Mr. Ferreter. He had to take these classes in order to complete his certification. So I guess what I'm saying with this point is like the letter that went out to the students that was trying to get everybody involved, not just the saints. Think about what it is individually a person can accomplish to show you goals and evidence of progress, and be very detailed about it. Be very specific about it. You know, if you're able to achieve the following things, you'll be rewarded in the following ways. If we don't move toward that type of approach, it's going to be hard to get people in the limited time that's available within schools to go through the amount of change we want them to go through. And if we don't offer the reward for doing it outside of schools, they're not going to be motivated to do so. Last story, story number 5, Columbia University smoke test. Picture this. You're sitting in a room and you're taking an exam in order to get into like a TA-ship in Columbia University. All of a sudden, smoke starts coming out of the wall. What do? White smoke. It's coming out of the vent and it's kind of going up there. What do? What do? Leave, right. Get up. Tell somebody. Do something. That's what 76% of the people did when they were in the room alone. Now, run the test again. We're all here together. All of a sudden, smoke starts coming out right over there near the flag. What do people do? They tend to stay. In fact, only 38% of the people tend to get up and say anything, compared to the 75 or 76% that said anything the first time around. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is that they're looking around at the risk equation, and they're saying to themselves, you know, I could look pretty stupid here if I get up and I start squawking about this smoke over here, and there's really nothing wrong. And these other people in the room don't seem to be having any problem with it right now. So I think I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. There's a risk equation in our schools that's similar to this. And it's one that is very much linked to technology. And I think we really need to think about it. And the risk equation that's in our schools right now is one in which right now, if you use technology and you use it incorrectly, there's a potential for you to get into a lot of trouble. In fact, if I were to look at the acceptable use policies of all of the districts for the state of California, chances are that I would find phrases such as unacceptable use includes accessing chat rooms and other social networking sites except those set up or approved by the school administration. Am I being unfair? Is that a fairly common thing that might be in, is that right? Okay, so our teachers are smart people. You know, what's the risk equation? Risk equation is, if I do something wrong, I could get in trouble. I'm looking around me. Doesn't look like a lot of other people are risking in this way. I think I'm just going to stay just where I am. Now, the problem is that staying just where you are could have consequences. But it oftentimes in our schools doesn't. No technology use often translates into no trouble at all. The reason for this is, I've mentioned before that I'm part of I co-founded a company that performs data analysis that helps schools link technology to learning. So this is the data for 100,000 students and about 12 to 14,000 teachers in one part of the country, where we asked them if technology is part of their evaluation, part of their department or grade level discussions, or part of class observation. And these gray and red bars are never and less than half of the time. And the vast majority of people reported that technology rarely comes up in evaluation, observation, or grade level or departmental level discussions. So we need to flip the risk equation. We need to make it so that not using technology in our schools is an uncomfortable thing to do. That you're sitting with your supervisor, or you're sitting with your department chair, or you're sitting in a class observation and someone says, hey, I noticed you didn't use any technology. I mean, wouldn't there have been a few ways here to really make some engaging breakthroughs in the kinds of material you were discussing if you did X, Y, or Z? And on the other side of the equation, when people mess up, when people use technology incorrectly in class, they leave a site open and somebody writes an obscenity on it, and they were supposed to have shut that site down. We need to very quickly and efficiently say, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to clean that up. Thanks for taking that risk. Thanks for being the kind of person who's trying something new. And by the way, the parent who just went ballistic because they saw that on the site, we're going to have your back on that. We're going to have your back on that. So, in conclusion, when we think about what's at stake here, when we think about like our children's learning and our own personal learning, I mentioned in the first session today that we've spent about $500 billion on educational technology in the last 15 years. This is in the US alone. Overall, the market for educational technology globally, annually, is in the area of about $80 billion. We're very quickly going to arrive at a point where everyone has a device and everyone has access, and we're trying to figure out what they should be doing with it. And it's these change equations that are actually going to be at the heart of whether or not it takes place. This is a picture from the movie Field of Dreams. Anyone see the movie Field of Dreams? Remember the phrase, if you build it, they will come? I have bad news for you. If you build it, they will not come. You can put the access in people's hands, and you can give them the connectivity and give them a big pipe. And what you'll find is a quote that I had back here, is that 2012 will look eerily similar to 1912, but it'll be a digitized version of it. And to shift the needle on learning, you really need to identify what it is that is sticking at your school. What exact parts of the change process? What are the success indicators that are lacking? And you need to address those one by one through the kinds of change processes that I talked about today. So if you do want any more information about that, about some of the work that I'm doing, I do have some cards up here that Jackie, one of the members of my company, Bright Bites, is actually doing some work talking to people at the conference about. But short of that, I thank you very much for your time today. And I hope you got a lot out of the presentation. And if you have any personal questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them afterwards. Feel free to come up. Thank you very much.